Welcome to Ace of Pentacles, your career strategy and workplace wellness podcast. I'm your host, Sara, and I'm so happy you're here. Join me every week as we investigate how people design and discover their way through their careers. Together, we'll explore the science of well-being at work and discover tools and strategies to help us do well and be well. Today, you'll meet Natalie LoBue. Natalie is a trance medium healer and psychic reader who uses sound healing to facilitate change in her sessions. I invited Natalie on the podcast because her work has made a significant impact on my life personally and professionally. From the moment I met Natalie, I knew that she was not only a gifted healer, but an incredible teacher and guide. She helped me understand how to tune into my own energy, emotions, and intuition. When we think about energy healing and psychic mediumship, these are very complicated and sometimes really ambiguous concepts. I love the approach that Natalie takes to help her clients understand these concepts and apply them to their own lives. I really enjoyed learning more about Natalie's work and how we might be able to tap into our own ability to create well-being for ourselves. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Natalie LoBue. All right, so Natalie, you're here because as I was thinking about people who have really influenced my career journey, you came to mind. You do something that's really unconventional, and it was actually very transformative for me when I came to see you, and it changed my perspective a lot on great life and work. You're like, great, that's exactly job done. Yeah, and so I wanted our listeners and our viewers, this is a career well-being podcast, and I wanted our listeners and our viewers to get exposure to different tools and techniques that they can use, that they have access to, that they might not even know about, to find wellness, especially as it relates to like work stress, managing relationships at work. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So welcome.
Thank you.
Let's start off here. How does one become a trance medium healer and psychic reader? Natalie.
Yeah, that is a good question. That is a loaded question. Simply put, I did a lot of training and a lot of self-exploration and what it means to be a psychic and what it means to be a trance medium. These are two separate things and they're different like abilities. So this is where it gets tricky in the work that I do. It's not so much like a noun as it is more of like a verb. So trance medium means it's your ability to channel. And what channeling means is you can go into a meditative space. You can lift your energy up to higher planes of awareness and start to engage with the world around you and the unseen realms, the spiritual realms from your crown, from your information, from your ability to kind of leave your body a little bit. And this is an excellent way to do energy work, to get insights, to see things more clearly. And that's exactly what being a psychic is. And there are so many misconceptions about what being a psychic is and what psychic reading does or how I do it is it's one's ability to see clearly. To be clairvoyant is to see clearly. So you have someone come into your office and they're struggling, they have all of these problems, these issues, these misconceptions, they have energy in their space that isn't theirs, that they're managing, which everyone does. And this can be, conditioning that we got when we're younger or literally like people in our life that are like throwing energy or have expectations or demands or needs that somehow we are contorting ourselves to fulfill. And what energy work does or what clairvoyance does is it helps identify where someone is holding something, where someone is carrying that structure, that belief, so that they can start to unravel and let it go. So the whole intention is to be able to see clearly what's going on, what's the perspective, what's the new vantage point, and then along with, okay, let's shift it, let's change it, let's do some energy work, let's unwind, disconnect. Some people use terms like cords, like, oh, I'm corded to someone, or so on and so forth.
Yeah. Thank you for explaining that. I think there's so much there, right? And just the way that you explained that. We'll dig into it, but I'd love to start with
how did you end up in this career? When did you like know that this is what you wanted to do? Tell us a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, that's a great question. So ever since I was little, I was really into, I guess what I would now call mysticism, right? When you're a little kid, you don't really have words for that. But I remember being a child and just having these really profound experiences where I felt like I would open and connect to universal love and just have this like this elevated sense of awareness of the life around me, of the people around me, and I could start to see like the lies or the stories that people were in, and I just knew that there was something more. I knew that there was so much more that went beyond religion and those concepts of spirituality, and it was kind of more this like heart opening that then I started to kind of follow the signs and kind of pings or hits that would, lead to more of those experiences. And so even in college, there was like a holistic health department that just opened up. And so they had classes on guided imagery healing and Chinese medicine and biofeedback and just kind of looking at these different structures of, mind, body, relationship and spirit. And what does that even mean? So, there was that. There was also influential people in my life that, it seemed like my best friend's stepmom, she was really into Reiki. And I'm like, ooh, what's that? Being like an 18-year-old young person and just kind of all in. What's energy reading? Ooh, I want to learn how to do that. And then just kind of following the signs, taking, any workshop I could find. And then that just kind of snowballed into meeting amazing healers and amazing teachers and just being so like grateful that, that I was being guided to these places. And then not only, to these people and programs and scenarios, but it's like also the effect that a lot of this energy work had. And for a while I was struggling myself with some autoimmune, health challenges and energy work did it. It's, conventional medicine is a wonderful place, but sometimes it just doesn't have answers. And so that's when you start to seek out new ways to take care of yourself.
Yeah. No, I originally came to see you because I was in a new job and I didn't know what the heck was wrong with me. I was not myself. I'm very in tune with my emotions and, I teach about emotional contagion and emotional intelligence and, but I couldn't see what was wrong. I couldn't figure it out. And so one of my friends was like, maybe you need to go see a Reiki healer. And I was like, what's a Reiki healer? And
right.
And I showed up at your office and I was like, I don't know what's wrong with me, but I am being told that maybe you can help.
Yeah, that happens all the time too.
Yeah. And, going back to what you said about, it helping you physically, even I was not expecting this, but during my first session with you, I think we may have talked about this. During my first session with you, I don't even know how to explain it, but something felt like it lifted out of my knee. And I was like, whew. I was like, what is that? And that session was not about me physically. I was just like, something's wrong emotionally. My knee, I've had issues with my knee for years and I've done acupuncture and physical therapy and it just never was solved. And I mean, it just got fixed in that moment. And that's when I started getting really interested in what is energy and what is like energy healing. Mm-hmm. So let's start here. What is Reiki and what is sound healing? Explain how that works.
Wonderful. So Reiki is a Japanese term, universal life force energy. And so Reiki, ki, another synonym, would be like chi or prana, or in the Celtic Druid tradition, it's called kles. And so a lot of these cultures, they have this understanding of life force, of energy. And how I understand it or how I see it is we're always generating. It's like our thoughts, our emotions, our dispositions kind of create this generating of energy. And it's like when you walk into the room or someone else walks into the room, it's like, what are they thinking? What are they feeling? What are they bringing to the table? That's one kind of simple way to think about energy or energy work. Another one is it's like energy flows where attention goes. So you might notice if you're driving, you're at a stoplight, and you look at some, people standing, at the crosswalk, and you just look at them and like they can feel it. They turn and they look at you and you're like, like there's something there. And I really think it's this like animal instinct that we have, that we all are these energetic beings, and that our thoughts and our emotions and our history and our trauma and what we believe to be true, all of these things kind of make up this energetic structure that we carry with us. And so Reiki is a way to you not only acknowledge that, but then to shift it. So I think of Reiki as like a Japanese way of saying energy work. And there's many different cultures that do energy work. And that's, again, just looking at what is it that we're carrying. The space around us isn't empty. And then being able to identify and release, lies or limitations or other people's energy that we're carrying, because we're taught we're supposed to for some reason.
Yeah.
Consciously or unconsciously is most usually where I find this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. When I met you, I had just started this job where people were like sharing a lot of their feelings about the place where they worked, and and how they were feeling about the culture and the other people that worked there. And every day I would come home and I'd sit there, and I had never had this experience before where I just wanted to shut down.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what to do. And so I get that when you say, these, when you were carrying other people's energy, and I think that's really very valid. We do that at work all the time.
Well, and it's your job.
It's
right.
Because I was an agent person. Now it's like, this is my job. I have to sit here and like listen to people kind of, tell me about their experience, which I think is a beautiful thing. I love that people can trust me with that, but it's also it's a little bit of a burden to carry too, right? Mm-hmm. And so as I then went on to become a coach full time, the energy practices that you taught me were so helpful, because I was able to recognize when I was carrying something that didn't necessarily belong to me. And I was able to like work on actually letting it go. Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about how that works. How do you recognize when you're carrying something that isn't yours, somebody else's energy?
That is the most important part, right? And that's the gift of awareness. And so when we become aware of ourselves, then it's only then that we can start to have realizations or shifts. And so awareness is the most important thing, because if you don't have that awareness, then you're going to keep going throughout your day, your job, having the same experiences. And then it's just going to become heavier and heavier and heavier, denser and denser and denser. And then people end up getting sick or just burned out or just too heavy. And so, yeah, the most important thing is to have some kind of awareness. And even if you don't, you might want to start with having a structure. So it might be, first thing in the morning or middle of the day or in the evening at the end of the day, to just kind of take some time to check in with yourself. Like, gosh, how do I feel? And what are my thoughts? What am I thinking about? How does my body feel? How does my heart feel? What's going on in my mind? And so to just, even if it's just 5 minutes, you can start to have these self-reflective processes and these energetic tools, like to ground yourself, to be in your body, to anchor your body, to give your body and your nervous system permission to let go and to release. And you might be aware of, the stress that you're carrying. You might not. And just giving yourself that time and space to take that spiritual concept of grounding and then apply it to the body. Okay, I'm going to let my nervous system release. I'm going to ground. I'm going to let go. And then you might do something else like, okay, I'm going to open my mind and clear it and let any, external thoughts or demands just, kind of open the door, open the window to clear that space out, because your head, your mind is also, it's your clairvoyant center. It's your third eye. It's the sixth chakra. And so it's this place where you get to see what's true and what's a lie. And so if that space is, taken over by, other people, or you're distracted, then, you can feel like you have head fog, or you might buy things you don't need, because that's what advertising is, right? Like, advertising is, how do I get into someone's head to convince them that they need my product when they really don't, right? So it's manipulative and I mean, don't get me started, but usually it's like someone's trying to get in, someone's trying to get in your head to convince you of one thing or another. And that can be in a relationship, that can be a product, that can be a boss, that can be, a family member, trying to convince you to put their needs before your own, or that your job is to be of service or whatever. So taking these, really simple spiritual concepts, you might call them energetic concepts, like grounding or clearing your mind, or creating and destroying for yourself, or just running neutral energies through your body to get things open and clear and like refreshed, is excellent, excellent things to do for self-care and just energetic well-being. So basically it's like if you have awareness, like, oh, I'm in a funk, or I don't feel good, or something feels off, like those are often terms I hear, or gosh, I don't know what got into me, like that's a great one. Or like, I feel beside myself. And it's like, these are all indicators. These are also like psychic, kind of terminology in a way, or indicators that there's something off in your energy that you can then, rebalance it or refresh or update, or whatever it is that you need to do. And so what my role is in that is if someone's like, man, I'm stuck, I don't know what's going on, then what I'll do is I'll go into a trance and I'll start to lift my energy up to higher planes of consciousness, see the energy you're carrying, see why it's there, whose is it, why are you holding on to it? And then 9 times out of 10, just being able to identify it, the client goes, oh yeah, I don't need to carry that anymore. Oh, and they start to, clear it on their own. And so like for your knee or for other, there's lots of times where there's been like spontaneous healing, and it's really just giving the body permission to let something go by identifying that something's there in the first place. So yeah, awareness is key.
Is the key. Yeah. I've spent a lot of my time being a project manager. I'm a Capricorn.
Ooh.
I'm very much like, what is the thing I need to do? Give me the thing. Like, I hear, sometimes people will talk and I'll be like, okay, I'm hearing all this stuff about like letting go and like, letting it be, but like exactly, give me like instructions. Give me like step-by-step guide, right? And one thing I really appreciated about you was I came in and I saw you, and you said something at one point about like, we can exist like up here, but we are here in this realm. Let's focus on what is needed here. And you got into this conversation about grounding, which you taught me this tool, and it was such a powerful tool. And for our listeners and our viewers who don't know what exactly we're saying when we're saying running energy through you, or can you talk a little bit about visualization and the power of your mind?
Yeah, absolutely. So why visualization works, and I've wrestled with this for a while, because it's like, oh, there's these concepts, or a lot of people talk about visualization. And, at first I was like, okay, sure, let me try. And then for a while I was like, this is a bunch of bullshit, like, oh, just think positive, or, visualize this. And really it's kind of one of those things that what you get out of it is what you put into it. And so a classic example I like to give my clients, or just anybody, is, say you're watching TV and you see a car chase, and and it's like, it's breathtaking. You're sitting there, you're like, oh my God. And then you start to like match it. Like you're like, oh, I'm not breathing, or like a suspenseful scene in a movie, right? You kind of shut down, or you get absorbed, and you start to match what you're seeing. Your nervous system is responding. You're not in the car chase, but you're having this like visceral response, right? And so visualization meditation is a way to kind of hone in on that and to make it your own. And so with these, psychic tools or psychic training, or just visualization in and of itself, I'd say keep it simple, because the energy in you, in your system is going to be really, really diverse, really beautiful, really complicated, and really, it can steer your attention away in all of these different like tangents. And so for grounding, it's like, if you create a visualization of what does it look like? What is a picture? What is a scene of what it would look like to not only be in your body and occupy it, but then to have your body be connected to this beautiful planet that we're on. You might start to feel in your body, you'll start to match that picture. And if you create that picture and you go, oh, doesn't work, this is stupid, then it's your body's going to be like, yeah, this is stupid. This doesn't work. But if you can really get into the power of visualization, you are working your energy system, you're working your nervous system, you are essentially creating a change. You are creating a picture that gives your body, allows your body to create the change. And that's what a healing is. A healing is a change. It's someone comes in one form, in one structure. We identify things, we clear things, we reorient things, and then someone leaves in a completely different structure, usually feeling lighter or relieved or any of this. And so there are definitely, curriculums that have like, okay, here's a set of, pictures or spiritual concepts, to memorize or, to study and analyze. But really, I'd say it's a really personal, and it's you creating, and however you want that to look like. But what does it look like when you're in your body, when you're grounded, when you're safe, when you feel like you belong? Like, what does that look like? Are there any cues, any sounds, any, colors or visualizations? Is it a nature scene, or maybe it's not, like, and it's personal, it's unique to you. And so you create the image, the body responds, simply put. The more you do it, the stronger it gets. And then you can just be like, even just like walking down the street, and that can be, a meditative experience where you're like, oh, I just saw my favorite flower that I use in this meditation. Like, oh, maybe that's an invitation to, am I grounded right now? Do I want to be grounded? Yeah, let's give it a shot. Let's see how that feels. So a lot of this, energy work or training it's really personal. It's how to be aware of yourself, how to check in with yourself, how you're feeling, and make any changes that you want to make.
Yeah. What I love about these tools that you teach people is that you can use them at any time, like you said,
Right.
walking down the street, right? But I used to use the tools that you taught me in meetings where like sometimes the meetings would get like really spicy, and I'd be sitting there imagining myself in this like cocoon, like zip up.
Yeah.
I'm like visualizing this like chord, like, okay, that's your frustration that I'm picking up and I don't need it right now, or that's your fear. That's a big thing. So one of the things that I've especially learned to do is identify where if someone is projecting their fear or their insecurity onto me, like how that's manifesting for me in my body, and when to recognize that's not mine, I need to let it go. That's somebody else's fear. Like, who is Sara and how does Sara move in this world, And so I think these are such powerful tools that you can just like, once you get used to doing it. And what's funny about it to me is they're so simple that I think we don't give them the credit because they're so simple, or we try to overcomplicate them. Like, I remember the second time I came to see you, I was like, I for the time that I was in that role, I saw you every month. I saw you once a month, and I was like, all right, time to go see Natalie. But I think it was the second time I came in, and you had done this grounding meditation with me at the beginning of our session, and it was so powerful. And I think I was overthinking it. So the next time I was like, oh my God, I need to go back and see Natalie because only she can do this. Like, this is her like thing that she does. And then you taught me how to do it. And you were like, no, actually it's not that complicated. Just like use your mind, use your imagination. So I thought that was really beautiful.
And that's actually a really good read because it's like to look at it from a different perspective, from an energetic perspective. It's like, here you are. It's like, you're like, oh, I don't feel good or something's off. I want to ground. And then it's like, but I don't know how. And then you're like, oh, and then you start analyzing it, and then you start spinning out and all of this stuff. And then then it's really like, so what's sitting in between you and your ability to ground? It's like, oh, it's the analyzer. It's overthinking things, right? It's like you're trying to ground from your head, but really it doesn't really work that way. You got to ground from your body, right? So you create the image to allow the body to do something. But how we're taught in our culture is like, read books about things, research things, like overanalyze things, like get the answer. And it's like, think. And it doesn't always work, right? Like it does work in some situations, but when you're trying to just manage your body or your energetic system, you got to go there, which is something we're not really shown or taught, or often just gets minimized or belittled. But really it's your relationship to yourself. And so again, it kind of goes back to like, you have your own answers, you have your own energy, you generate your own energy. And someone like me just kind of like points out, oh, it looks like there's a lot of energy in your analyzer that's blocking your ability to ground. And then you go, oh, that does make sense. Or you go, actually, that doesn't make sense. And that's not true. And so you always get to decide what's true for you, what kind of rings true, and then make the adjustments that you need for your well-being.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about my practice is it's not about me. It's like you come in, it's like, oh, this is about you. Like, what can we do to do that? It's not about, like classical therapy where you're just like venting everything. And then I work with a lot of therapists and I see them at the end of the day and they're just like, oh, they're just like so defeated. Like you said, like people just dumping on you all day, or just like over analyzing things. And so energy work is transformation. It's change as opposed to like, overthinking things.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's so counterintuitive to like what we've been taught.
Right.
Because we're taught to overthink everything, analyze everything, like you said, but also we're taught to look outside of ourselves for those answers.
Right.
So like, what is my energy? I mean, I've read like 1 million books since I met you on energy because I'm like, oh, this is so fascinating. And I was constantly like, okay, maybe this author can tell me a little bit more and maybe this podcast or this, YouTube channel or whatever. It's almost like it's that moment of realization where you're like, I have to go within. I have to figure this out for myself. Mm-hmm. Symbolism is another thing that I'm like, symbols mean something to you specifically. Like, people are like, oh my gosh, I had this dream. Do you know what this dream means? And they'll start Googling it. And I'm like, the symbolism is actually coming from within you. And so we're taught to look outside of ourselves. And so we're like, oh, maybe that person can help and that person can help. And I love energy work because it's so empowering because it's like, no one's going to come help you. You can help yourself. People can try to help you, but the help that you get from yourself is so powerful.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then as a practitioner, you're just helping someone, you're just helping identify the obstacles or the blocks that are blocking them from having their own answers.
Right.
Right. And so you're creating a space. You're just creating a space for transformation. And so, I'm not going to tell you, oh, your dream means this, because who would say that, that's ridiculous. But it's like, I might be able to like read the energy of that dream. Like, oh, I noticed a lot of fear in this dream, or, oh, I noticed that there's these different emotions when like you describe it or that you're processing these energies, but to be able to be like, oh, the owl means this because I read it in a book, because it's like, what if you had your own experience with owls and they like attacked you like in the forest? You'd be like, okay, that's a danger sign. Like I got to run, it's not like wisdom and knowledge, you have your own answers. And so again, like as a reader, like I'll read things and you get to decide, oh yeah, that rings true. Oh, that makes sense. Or you get to say, no, that's totally wrong. And I see that, I guess like one way to kind of, to identify, what's true and what's a lie in your space is if it's true, it feels good. Mm-hmm. It feels liberating. You're like, oh, that does make sense. That does resonate. Or if someone's telling you something and you're like, I don't know. Or if you become afraid, or if you become, you shut down, or, you don't feel like yourself anymore, then that's a lie and that's not your truth. And so in this line of work that I'm in, I get to see all kinds of interesting things, but I've 100% had many people come to me saying that they've gone to other psychics, and that they said that they were cursed. And I'm like, oh man. And so then like, it's like the damage is done. It's really hard to undo that fear that someone has. And then of course that is like, oh, you're cursed. And if you give me 10 grand, I'll, So anyway, so it's like light bulbs should go on. Like this is but like that fear really gets into people's space and it consumes them. And then they start contorting themselves all around this energy, this lie, this, this thing that says, oh, there's something wrong with me and I don't know, and I can't do anything about it. Right. And so it totally messes with people. And so then my job is to go in and be like, okay, this is a lie and this is where you're holding on to it and, blah, blah, blah. And then do whatever I can to release it. But it's like the power of someone's mind. And if they're just going to bring that back and hold on to it, it's really sad. But I think you find essentially fraud in all lines of work, right? Like you see it like across the board. And so it's just interesting how it shows up.
Yeah. Actually, that's a really good segue into one of the things I want to ask you is, there's so many misconceptions around like what is a psychic, and you do a beautiful job explaining it, and what is energy, but there's so much negativity around that, partly because some people go into this work from a place of not intention of maybe not healing others, but almost like this fear of there being not enough in the world, you're just trying to almost like take advantage of like people's insecurities or their fears, and you're like, to your point of like, if you give me 10 grand, I'll fix your problem.
Yeah, right. I will uncurse you.
Yeah. Curse you. How does that impact how has that shaped kind of your own relationship with your work? Has it impacted it? How do you deal with that?
Well, since it's my practice and I get to kind of set that how I want, I spend a lot of time like refining like what my values are. And lately it's really just about like authenticity and integrity. And so if that's how I'm holding the space or creating sessions, or that's my intention, and that's kind of like, just the overall, ethos is, that kind of, it just keeps everything in check.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's like, there are people that go, practitioners that are, go into scarcity or this or that. And there's also, I think what's different about what I do and what other people that say, oh, I'm psychic is, I don't think I was like born with this gift of being psychic. You know what I mean? And a lot of people have that. They're like wide open and they get impressions and this and that. I think I was born with the gift of empathy. I think as a very sensitive child, just had so much empathy for, everything and everyone around. I was the young person that like was trying to save, really toxic people that I should have just been like, no, you're dangerous. But like, I can help you. And so I think for me, it's like my orientation to the work that I do. What opened the door was those spiritual revelations of unconditional love and humanity and life. And then that paired with empathy, like those were the building blocks for me that then led into like, oh, what's psychic? What's that? Like, what's being a psychic healer? That sounds fascinating. Like, what is sound healing? This is fascinating. So that's where I did the training. That's where I did more programs and learning. And I'm so grateful for that because it really put it in a grounded space. And one thing I noticed a lot about this kind of, this world or, the work that I do or that I see other people do is it's like a human thing too. It's like you have an insight or I'll watch someone, give a reading or I'll get a reading from someone and it's all projection. And that's like, it's really sad because you're having like someone having like, oh, I see mother and this, and they're telling this grand story, but it's not landing with like the readee, or the readee's getting really confused. And it's like, oh, she's actually doing an excellent reading, but she's not reading the person in front of her. She's reading herself, right? Or she's reading someone else, or she's reading someone's fears, right? So you might have a client come and be like, oh, I'm trying to do this new job, or, oh, I want to move. And they'll be like, oh, don't do it. It's terrible. Oh. And it's like they're reading the person's fears. They're not reading the person's ability to create for themselves. And so this is where it's really important as a reader, as a healer, is to always check yourself, right? Like, is this a projection? Am I reading them? Am I reading their mother's influence? That's like, please don't move. But it's like, oh, I really don't think you should move. Because it's like, you're still reading the energy in someone's space. You shouldn't move, but it's whose energy is it, right? And so that's where you go, oh, I see your mom is really afraid of you taking this next step for yourself. And they go, oh, wow, so that's not my fear. That actually makes a lot of sense. I am ready. So there really is this like, it's like being a detective, right? It's like you close your eyes, you go into a meditation, and you're just like a truth seeker. It all happens really fast. It's really beautiful. It's so fun to be in. But you're just like an investigator of, what's true and what's not. And to just like, for anyone else that does reading work out there, to just really, really be cautious, because you have someone in front of you that's, going to be influenced by what you say. So, have integrity and like double check your work, So it's like, what's your intention in all of that?
Absolutely. I see now, like, it totally makes sense when you say awareness is that key, because I'm sure being so aware of where your energy is and where somebody else's energy is, and this is not their energy, just being aware of that can really change how the experience that someone has with you and the experience they walk away with.
Right. And that's also why I don't like to give advice. Because again, it's like, what book should I read? Like, what book has my answer? And you know what I mean? And then it's like, if I have someone who's in front of me who's like vulnerable or impressionable or open to whatever I have to say, it's like, like you should take a yoga class. And it's like, what if they hate yoga, and they do it and they hurt themselves? Like, that's like, that's not their answer. That's my answer. That's like, that's what I would do if I were, in a similar situation. And so and again, I think this goes for anyone that's in like the health or, wellness or whatever community is. It's like, really be careful about giving advice, and rather the point is to clear the external influence out of someone's space so they have their own answers, or they go, I think I want to go on a hike, or, oh, I think I want to travel to, wherever. And it's like, let them have their creative expression. Let the other person create their life how they want. And like, who am I to say like, you should only use oil paints, it's like, it's so limiting. And then it just creates a really interesting codependent dynamic. So
yeah, I see that a lot as a coach too, where people will come to me and be like, okay, like, what do you think I should do? And I've gotten very comfortable saying, well, let's just think about that. What's coming to you? You know, and I turn it back around and they're like, and then all of a sudden something opens up and they're like, well, this is what I'm thinking. And I'm like, there you go. There's some direction, right? Yeah. But I think it goes back to people, all of us, to some extent. It's just easier to not feel like I have a responsibility here. Like, yeah, this is my life, but like, if that person tells me to do that, or if that person tells me to do that, like, I can just easily like follow their direction. And, and it takes a lot of courage to trust yourself, right? Because that's scary, because when you start to trust yourself, I think you might do things that you've never thought you were going to do. You might do things that you don't feel prepared for. Right. I've done, just in the past year, I've done so many things that I felt like I was not prepared for. I was like, interesting. I might do that. Yeah, it's a scary thing to just trust yourself. Weirdly, that's a scary thing.
Well, right, because we're taught from such a young age to just do what you're told.
Yeah. So Natalie, I had after I came to see you, I was obsessed. I was like, oh, she's magical and amazing. And I had you come to one of our team events, the women's breakfast portion of the event, and I had you teach a grounding meditation. That was really powerful. I got a lot of good feedback on that. And I know you do this work with your corporate clients. Tell us about when a company might consider bringing you in for an event and what that might look like.
Right. So the tools that I teach are a lot about kind of reinforcing or giving tools to have someone recognize their own agency and their ability to create, their ability to manage their own energy field. So it's like thoughts, and that's emotions, and and like well-being. And so if you're in a workplace that, is toxic, like, what does that mean? And oftentimes what that could look like is people are just like throwing energy at each other. There's like a lot of gossip, or there's like a lot of like victim energy, like, oh, like I'm a victim, it's their fault that this is happening. Or there's, and then the people on top are like, oh, it's their fault, they're not doing what I say. Anyways, it's like whenever there's just a lot of energy or miscommunication or things being thrown around to where people don't have their agency or even just the space to do their job, right? Because it's like, if you're so compromised with work politics, and depleted by them or invalidated by them, how are you actually going to do your job? Or are you even going to do a good job? And so what I do is it's like, in a way, it's teaching people like accountability for oneself, to have integrity with their own actions and how they speak, to themselves and how they speak to others. But it's really more about recognizing that you are responsible for yourself, right? Like, yes, you're going to have, higher ups and people are going to have more power, control, or whatever, but it's like, you really have the ability to set the tone of your space and how you engage and interact with other people. So if you have, a whole company or a whole department that has these tools or has these ideas of, oh, let me ground myself, let me recenter myself, let me, come back to, running my energy or coming back to just feeling more like myself, then you're not so much in reaction. You're not being defensive. You're not a victim. You're not, distracted really. And so, yeah. And then it can even get even more magical if you have a lot of people that are really on board with this. It's like, not only can you increase your own creative life force within yourself for you to do your job or to live your life or to be an artist or to be inspired. It's like, if you have other people that are on board doing that as well, it's like, it affects the whole company, because then not only are you in this wonderful space to create your own life or to do a wonderful job, you have other people that are doing it. It really affects the whole business. And just think about in terms of like energy or life force, like how much of it is being spent in politics versus how much is being spent in like creative output and the betterment of, the company's mission.
Yeah. I think this isn't what you do. It might not be seen as a tool for companies, and I've been in HR, so I know when there's like conflict in the workplace, people are like, oh, let's, I always laugh because there are people that will ask me like, oh, we work in a really toxic work environment, and leaders hate each other and nobody can communicate and it's awful and we're all going back to work, and can you come do Enneagram for us? And I'm like, honey, Enneagram is not going to solve your problems today. Right. And this is it's deep work, right? But I think it has so much more power, and it's so much more empowering for people. It gives you that sense of, like you said, agency. It's like you control your outcomes to some extent. You control the way that you engage with other people at work. You control your energy, and it's giving power back to the individual to be able to manage that in a way that works for them. So I think it's amazing. I don't think enough corporations, I don't think enough companies think to bring in like a psychic trance media healer to talk to their teams.
The branding is so hard.
I think they should. I think we need more of that.
Right. Well, because if you think about it, if you start to develop self-awareness and you are in a position of power, it might be hard for you to recognize that you're actually the one causing the problem, because you're throwing energy at other people and they don't like you, or they are afraid, or like where is the toxicity starting, right?
Yeah.
And how to shift that, and what do people really want or need? And sometimes it's just like a little validation or like a little appreciation can just really change so much in a workplace.
Yeah. I think it's also just, even on a very basic level, understanding that energy is contagious, that emotions are contagious, that you can actually, I like the way you say it, like there are people throwing energy at each other and you don't think about that. Mm-hmm. You think about the words that maybe people use, but not necessarily like
the intention and
the force. Exactly. Well, yes. All right. So one of my questions for you, and this is probably going to be a hard one, I'm going to ask you to think of maybe one or two things, but what's a misconception that people have about energy and energy work that we can start to shift a little bit?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of people discredit it, and they just think it's, it's woo woo, or it's not real, but it is. And again, it's your intention, it's your attention, it's just your energy flows where attention goes. And so we're all in this world. We all generate energy. We all have thoughts and emotions and the ability to affect another person. And so it's just taking that one step deeper and looking at how that can affect you on so many other ways and so many other levels. Yeah. So misconceptions about what I do is, or energy work or psychic healing, or, all of these really loaded terms is it's really simple. It's like, we are energetic beings. We are thinking, we are feeling, we are generating. We have energy is always moving in the body. It's moving in our space. If it wasn't, we'd be dead. That's obviously like a great picture of a lack of vitality, right? And so many cultures have this understanding, this basic understanding of chi, of life force, of prana, of kles. And if you can start to think about yourself in these terms and understand that we are living in a world where everyone else is doing the same thing, then it doesn't become woo-woo. It becomes a way to self-reflect and check yourself. What am I bringing to the table? What am I generating? What am I carrying? What is someone throwing at me? Like they smiled or they said something nice, but it sure didn't feel that way. There was an undertone there. And so it's like you start to recognize what is the energy of what's happening around me, that what I'm engaging in. And that's just, to me, it's just like a higher level of clarity. It's maybe a higher dimension of understanding or of awareness, as opposed to being defensive or being disempowered or being a victim. It's more about how do you engage in this world? How do you engage with yourself? And and of course, like in pop culture, it's like, oh, psychics and clairvoyance, like, oh, crystal balls, like all of this like future prediction stuff. And that's not what it is. It's all about clarity, and it's all about having your information, having your truth, having your answers, which is a lot different than seeking that from somebody outside of your space.
Yeah. I mean, we all have it, right? We all have intuition. We all have like the gut feeling, and it's a matter of like
validating it. Yeah. And being like, that's real. You should trust that, you know, exactly. Or like, oh, that's intuition, or that's a fear, like what's the difference? And so, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Such good information, Natalie. Thank you so much for joining us, for being here, for teaching us what you do and how we might use it to heal some of our relationships at work, but also our relationship with our work. Where can people learn more about you, learn more about energy healing, come see you if they need to?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So I have a private practice in Berkeley. I've been doing this since 2012, which is wild. And that's, I'll do a combination of, readings and healings and also sound healing. And then, but honestly, a lot of my work is becoming more like over the phone or like virtual. And so it's kind of like therapy in a sense, but it's more, again, just like, reading the energy of what we're carrying. And so you can do it from anywhere. And so, there's, you can go to my website. It's my name, NatalieLoBue.com. I'm happy to answer any questions. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.